All right, let's do this. How do you become an award-winning SEO agency? I've never been in one, so actually, yeah, I think that's true. What does that even mean? How are their approaches unique? We'll be answering those questions and looking at what made their campaigns so successful and more. I'm George Nguyen, editor for Search Engine Land. Thank you so much for joining us for this discussion. We're going to be talking to some Search Engine Land award-winning agencies about their particular campaigns. I'll be introducing them in just a second, but first, I wanted to thank our award sponsor, Microsoft, for making this possible, helping us recognize their outstanding work. All right, now right along to it, I'll be introducing our award winners by category. Categories are kind of long-winded, bear with me. So when I say your category, please, would you mind saying your name and briefly describing your campaign, the challenges, and the objectives? Let's get right to it. First up is the Best B2B Search Marketing Initiative, SEO.
Yeah, hi, I'm Lindsay Nielsen from NP Digital. For our campaign, we worked with pros who's been around for 30 years in the pricing and selling solution space with AI-powered solutions for their clients. So they were coming off the heels of a website redesign, really wanted to make a bigger splash in the digital space and came to us to help them do that. So one of the challenges that they have is that they actually have a very niche target base with specific industries, specific solutions that they offer, and very high value buyers. So we didn't necessarily want to cast a large net. We wanted to get the right people in through our SEO strategy. One of the things that made this a little interesting is that we were kind of trying to find a nice balance between kind of the product marketing buzzwords and the conceptual theories of what their product does and actually how users in these very specific industries and personas were searching for those terms. So long story short, our KPIs were year-over-year growth in sessions and conversions, and then over the longer term of the sales cycle, increased influence by digital channels for pipeline.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Okay, and the next category, the winner of the overall SEO initiative Enterprise.
Hi, I think that's me. My name is Lily Ray. I'm the director of SEO at Path Interactive. So we are really excited to win this award. This is for an insurance client who came to us when they had been negatively impacted by a few of Google's recent core updates. So we knew that to address that type of problem, it's really going to require all hands on deck, all the different types of SEO initiatives that we might do for a campaign. It's never one specific thing. So we took a look at the landscape and we saw that there were definitely some issues as it relates to EAT, expertise, authority, and trust, which I talk a lot about. So there was a lot of content on the website that needed to be updated to be meeting Google's expectations as far as EAT goes in that category. But beyond that, there was a lot of other work that we did as well, both on the technical front, content optimization, website architecture, and backlinks as well. So it was really all the different types of things that factor into an SEO campaign. We hit the ground running, as well as pivoting for COVID quite a bit too, with some new content and addressing our customers in kind of new ways. So we were really excited to see that the site saw some really big improvements in 2020.
Thank you very much, Lily. Core updates and COVID. That's got most SEOs shaking in their boots. We're going to be moving right along to the winner of overall SEO initiative, Small Business.
Hi, that's me. I'm Abby Reimer from Uproar, and CaringBridge was our client. CaringBridge is a nonprofit that offers online free health journals to people going through a health crisis so that you can update everyone all at once. So their main objective is they have a large brand presence. So most of the searches they were getting found for are people who are already familiar with the brand. Where they really needed help is getting more traffic to their resources or blog section, and to really familiarize people who are going through a health crisis and need help with their service. So the challenge here was, as a nonprofit, they don't have the time or resources maybe a large scale company has. So we had to work around that. And that really involved kind of what Lily was saying about EAT, expertise, authority, and trust. We thought about who are the experts on these topics around how to, cope with a certain health crisis. And we found that it's actually CaringBridge users, people who have gone through it themselves. So how we got around that challenge is by reaching out to their large Facebook base and asking them, hey, what are your tips for people going through this? And that's actually how we sourced a lot of the content. So we, managed to make it authoritative while also incorporating what users actually wanted to hear.
Thank you very much, Abby. So I'm already seeing some overlap here, EAT. I'm sure you want more people to be thinking about that, right, Lily? But we're going to be talking more about those commonalities. But of course, let's get to our fourth panelist, I suppose, here, or award winner in the Retail Search Marketing Initiative SEO category.
Hi, thank you, George. I'm Kaushal, and I'm the founder of InfoDigit. We are based out of India, and this campaign was for SuperBlist, which is the largest fashion e-tailer in South Africa. For SuperBlist, the challenge was that how do they get maximum sessions during the Black Friday period? They have almost around 5 days when they celebrate this particular event, and the challenge was SuperBlist site was not at all ranking for this particular set of keywords in the year 2018. So for 2019, they wanted that for Black Friday specific keyword and the related keywords, they should rank in the top 3 positions. So that was the challenge for them. And fortunately, with all the efforts that InfoDigit team did, we were able to rank them on featured snippet for not only some of the Black Friday related keywords, but several other keywords, which helped them to achieve the objectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kaushal. So there we go, Black Friday. We have all this crazy mix. We're going to be returning back to the first category I mentioned, Lindsay over at NP Digital. We're going to be discussing some questions about her particular campaign and what made it successful. But again, I encourage everybody to just chime in if you find any other tips that you want to bring to our viewers' attention. So Lindsay, let's take a look back. I think you mentioned the name of your client, but I wanted to make sure so that I don't accidentally reveal too much information. I know that can be a conflict there. Are we saying the name of your client, or are we just going?
Yeah, our client is Pros, P-R-O-S. Yeah.
Pros. Okay,
Yep.
So I'm not familiar with the company, but going over the entry myself, I actually looked into the company and was very confused by what they do. And you mentioned buzzwords and things like that. How was that a big sticking point in working in B2B, particularly for your agency?
Yeah, so it's definitely a challenge when you get into a lot of, especially like SaaS companies, empowering digital transformation and words like omni-channel and things like that. But sometimes it's a little hard to actually connect that to the solutions, the pain points that the users are actually looking for. We kind of dug things down a little more granular, got into some specific industries. We also notice a challenge that comes up, especially with these larger solutions and products that they offer. The sales cycle is really long. And so with organic, especially, attribution can sometimes be a challenge because you don't necessarily see that one-to-one connection between, a top of funnel visit to the site and revenue. So they have now a more robust content offering that we've been able to bring a lot of in front of the gate. A lot of it was previously uncrawlable or not optimized or existed in PDF format or used primarily for demand gen. So one of the cool things about Pros is they have so many fantastic thought leaders and subject matter experts internally. We were able really to tap into a lot of what they already have and just kind of either reformat it or really closely align it to very specific long tail keywords that were actually more representative of how users are thinking about the products and solutions from the buyer's perspective. Got it. So would you say that was the toughest challenge in this particular campaign? I would say between the attribution with the long sales cycle over like 12 to 18 months is the sales cycle. So we're kind of still hoping to see some of the fruits of our labor continue to appear over the next 6 months or so. And then the other was finding that nice line between, the brand messaging, the product marketing team, and how they needed to convey, the spirit of their product and how we needed to optimize for how the users and the search engines are incorporating the content. Right. And when you talk about content in your entry, it seems like conversion
pursuing conversion opportunities or creating them through gated downloads and interactions with chatbots was one of your goals. Can you explain a bit about how you directed users to those pages?
Yeah, so Pros has actually done a really great job site-wide over the last year or two of creating new opportunities for users to convert. So when we're driving users to the blog versus a product page, we wanted to make sure that they had a very natural next step to take to continue to push them down that funnel. So we would either, we had the chatbot on every page. We also would either give them something to a more kind of mid-funnel blog and incorporate a lot of the gated assets that Pros is using for demand gen as kind of a really solid way to use our organic efforts, both to get net new users to the site, but also as a demand gen tool. So
okay, so you have these great assets, but I'm sure our viewers are a little bit unfamiliar with the sector. Is it one of those sectors where the clients, they just come to you, or is it kind of like a harder sell? You really have to work on your CTAs to get them to click through and sign up and download things. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel with some of the larger investment point price B2B tools and solutions, there is a huge consideration phase, education phase, and that's normally where organic search comes mostly to play. But for us, kind of feeding that and filling the middle of the funnel too with the users we were able to attract, for the first time to the site was also really important in showing impact to the business for the long term. So the assets we would use, maybe they come in for a blog that's about, a pain point or solving a problem or kind of how our company's using this. And then we'd, give them either an analyst report or an ebook, for a survey of how business leaders, have seen increased efficiencies from implementing some of these digital selling tools. So it was pretty successful, and we, had double-digit increase in conversions from the organic channel since our campaign start.
Nice. So it sounded like you really tapped into whatever the search intent was. And I understand that you used Search Console to figure out what that was to create all that content. But I also understand that you didn't rely on third-party data or other software vendors, any other tools. Is that right?
Well, we always check all of the tools we have access to, at least for directional guidance. But what we were finding with the very specific long tail queries related to the software and solutions keywords, we weren't really getting a lot of volume back on those tools. And so instead, we kind of tapped into Search Console to say, well, what does Google think we're relevant to? And are we using those terms in our content, as much as we could be? And so we kind of, I want to say, like reverse mapped some of the content based on what Search Console was kind of inferring that they thought we were relevant to. And it ended up actually opening a lot more opportunity than, some of the third-party tools might have suggested. And even if they were, only 20 clicks a month, that's, 20 really qualified users that we definitely wanted to get to the site.
Wow.
I can relate so much to that, Lindsay, of like the keyword research tools don't always show the true story. And then you look in Google Search Console and it tells a completely different situation. It's a good reminder too, like even during the pandemic, there are so many new searches and ways of searching that keyword tools just don't have the data for yet. So it's good to talk to your audience and look in different tools and actually see what you're being found for. So yeah, totally can relate to that.
And a lot of the research we do for our clients, especially in these kind of niche spaces, is very manual. We don't just like reports from the tools. So this was a great example of how that can kind of become a win.
Right. And Abby just mentioned the pandemic, which we are still very much fighting through. I was wondering, for your particular campaign, was the pandemic factor, did it really change the frame of reference for your reporting or anything like that? And, the answer might just be, no, it didn't.
Yeah, so it's funny. We actually saw organic traffic continue to increase for the 4 to 6 months following the COVID-19 pandemic. And a lot of the challenges that Pros actually solves for, like enterprise digital transformation, changing buyer habits and digital selling, kind of became more relevant than ever, which I think also probably worked in our favor, in favor of the brand. But where we were really seeing the impact from COVID with all of our B2B clients, not just Pros, was really in kind of the middle and the bottom of the pipeline, where that sale was just taking longer to happen just because of the trepidation of the buyers during, the tumultuous landscape. But some of that's kind of already started to shift.
tumultuous landscape. I like that word. I wanted to know if there was any other sage advice that you have for B2B search marketers that are finding themselves in a position similar to this campaign.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of what, at least, a lot of like the SaaS and B2B companies that I've worked with, a lot of the focus is on kind of demand gen, through paid channels. And what was really cool here is that I feel like we proved that having content available kind of throughout the funnel is most important, because if you're not discoverable at the beginning, those clicks and those users are going to get their research from somewhere else. And by integrating this with remarketing, on the paid side, we were actually able to build out a really solid funnel, starting with some of our more educational blog content, and really drive users through a nurture process that set them up to be very informed and ready when it was time to make that conversion and that first solid step. So yeah, tap into Search Console, get kind of creative with how you decide what the messaging, how to massage the messaging if you need to match with what the users are looking for. And then yeah, think full funnel when you think about optimizations.
Yes, let's hear it for organic. I know a lot of people just kind of overlook it when they're doing a B2B, and especially when they feel like that paid will really get people through to the bottom of the funnel. And, of course, there's reasons for that, but there's also immense benefits to having content all throughout, no matter what sector you're in. Unless I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, prove me wrong. You can tweet at me, let me know what sectors that doesn't apply to. I think we briefly lost Kushal. Hopefully he'll be back on. But in the meanwhile, I'm going to be moving over to the Best Overall SEO Initiative Enterprise, Lily Ray of Path Interactive. Hello, Lily.
Hey there.
Okay, so an insurance client, right? Yes.
An insurance client. Yes.
That is what we are going with. They were adversely affected by core updates, you said, that pushed their listings to page 2 or 3. And before that, was it page 1?
Yeah, they've been fluctuating. There's a few core keywords that really drive the bulk of performance for this keyword. So it's really going to be those high volume, really generic head terms in this case. And that's basically how they gauge performance and success. When the core updates rolled out, they lost visibility across the board, but they had dropped pretty significantly for those core keywords. So we were tasked with bringing those back.
So you mentioned a spectrum of difficulties here, but was there one that was really like the pain in your side as you guys went about going through this campaign?
Honestly, I think that they were all equally important. So one of the things about this site is that they've produced a lot of content over the years, and it's not necessarily a content publisher site. That's not their primary purpose as a business. It's just something that they've successfully used for SEO and to drive new visibility over the years. And we do actually think that that's one of the main sources of why the site saw declines, because one of the things that can happen, and something that I see really frequently with sites that are negatively impacted by recent core updates, is that they have produced so much content for so long, and maybe way back when the content did really well for SEO, but the rules of the game have kind of changed. So one of the things that we were looking at is, you have these great product pages, service pages, brand pages, but there's this blog that has so much content on it. And in many cases, that content was not up to par with what we would expect nowadays with good quality content. So it was really chipping away at that and just making sure that whatever is being indexed by search engines is truly high quality content. So that was really like the bulk of the strategy.
Okay, so since we're talking about content and you've kind of really been a flag bearer to bring EAT and YMYL, so expertise, authoritativeness, trustworthiness, and your money or life content, especially within that sector. You become so closely associated with these acronyms, Lily. How did those concepts affect the campaign?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny because I say this a lot, but like not all of our clients are necessarily affected by these things. Not all the clients are necessarily like need to focus on EAT as a primary strategy. But for this particular client, we did feel very strongly that that was a big issue, a big concern, that those things were not being demonstrated adequately throughout the site. So for example, there was some content, a lot of content actually, that really required like medical review or expert review that the company wasn't demonstrating that they had actually used expert reviewers throughout that content. So you kind of read the article and it's like, who wrote this? Should I trust them? So we made a lot of enhancements just like on the template level to depict that we can be trusted. And in cases where we felt a little bit iffy, even the client, like, oh, we wrote that 6 years ago, it's not really accurate anymore. There was a lot of like consolidating and getting rid of content. So in many cases, it's just about communicating the right things on the site, but also making sure that you're putting your best foot forward with trustworthy content, especially if you're a website that falls into the YMYL space.
Right. And I think just in every sector, you want to assert yourself as an authority. That's how you get the user or the customer or the client to trust you. And even for my own writing, like, how do I come off as more authoritative? And I'm always thinking about that. But what are you at liberty to discuss what tweaks in particular you might have made to the template to carry that across to say, hey, this is legit?
Yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of work that we do. Again, like, this is the simple thing that everybody thinks about with EAT, but just disclosing who your authors are and who your experts are more clearly on the page. So there was a lot of that, but that's not everything for sure. So you really have to look at the quality of the content. And myself and my team, we always recommend looking at Google's actual documentation about auditing for EAT, because they provide dozens and dozens of different questions that you should ask in terms of, can the user trust this content? So we actually have all those questions kind of like consolidated on a list that we use when we're reviewing the content. And as you go through the process of reviewing content, you check against those questions, you'll notice like, this sentence isn't sourced correctly, or I don't know where we got that information from. So just telling the client, like, can you back that up with some claims, link out to external sites, or maybe delete this because it's a little bit questionable. And as you go through the content and do that at scale, I think that's the type of thing that can have a big impact overall.
Right. It always comes back to the, oh, sorry, go ahead, Lindsay.
I was just going to say, in my experience, it's often a hard pill to swallow for clients to retire content, I was just wondering if you had any challenges kind of pushing that initiative across.
Yeah, I think it always comes down to the data. So it's not just like a gut feeling about content, although it can be. I mean, we've had clients where it's like, that needs to come off the website. And they're like, yeah, it's not safe information anymore. So that's easier to get rid of, but data speaks for itself. So if you see that there's really no organic traffic going to the page, not a lot of page views, not a lot of engagement, maybe it hasn't ranked for anything in a few years, that makes it a lot easier to recommend what to do with it. And it's not always just delete it. In many cases, it's like consolidate it into this one, redirect it, and then update that existing article.
Fantastic. When I was reading the applications for the awards, the ones that stood out the most, they just seem to make so much sense, even to somebody who doesn't particularly know that much about the sector or maybe SEO. That's one of the things, is the solutions oftentimes make just a lot of sense to the layperson. I also wanted to know, Lily, could you speak a bit about how you used page search to inform your page titles and meta descriptions?
Yeah, this is something we love doing just because you get so much more direct information about the performance of keywords with paid search. You can really tie it to the conversion a lot more easily. We used to be able to do that in SEO, but it's been a while. So we always love to bring in paid data whenever possible, cross-reference that with organic title tags, meta descriptions, and really see, like, are we using the best possible language? So an example for this client would be, we have state pages, right? Like a lot of brands do, they have different pages for different states. We can actually look on the paid level and see if different language resonates in different states differently. So as opposed to having like a templated title tag where you just fill in the name of the state, maybe there's some tweaks that you can do to the language that better resonates with the audience in that state. And the keyword itself might even change based on how people describe things. So paid can give you that type of data.
Yeah, I always love to see it when those two sectors come together. And even within our own awards, we're kind of separating these things, right? It's much easier to understand, but you can incorporate it if it makes your campaign better. Okay.
I'm jotting that down. That's a good tip.
We are burning through time here. Up next, we have Abby Reimer from Uproar, the winner of the Best Overall SEO Initiative Small Business. Abby, yours was different in that you used user-generated content, and I thought that was quite novel. What led to you thinking about, oh, let's resort to this?
Yeah, so that really goes back to their main challenge, which is lack of time and resources to invest in, one-on-one interviews with individual users or even like doctors and therapists. And that actually, we kind of discovered that the experts in topics like how to support someone who's going through, say, a cancer journey. That doesn't necessarily need to be a doctor. It's actually the people who go through it every day, whether it's themselves or they are experiencing it in a loved one's life. So that's what really led us to, do the research for the topics and, create prompts on social media. CaringBridge is a established brand. They had more than 300,000 followers on Facebook. So we thought, why not try asking for their advice? And I mean, some posts get upwards of 100 to 200 comments of people saying, their stories, their tips, their advice, and we see common themes throughout them. And then we actually also incorporate those comments within the content itself to further back up, these are real people's tips that you can trust. So that's really where we got the idea for that.
Right. And so I want to say that usually when in this particular sector, or for a lot of clients, they hire an agency and they have these big ambitious goals. Of course, they hire an agency because they don't really know what they're getting into. And you chose not to compete with better established like Mayo Clinic type content where you need these PhDs that have like 3 decades of experience. Would you say that that's something that you look at within your agency often? You just try to assess where you can compete, and how do you go about doing that?
Yes, absolutely. And that's actually like a common talking point that I talk to, not just with CaringBridge, but with other clients, is I show them the search results and I say, if we see Healthline, Mayo Clinic, WebMD in the top 3 results, let's not even go for it most of the time, because we're not trying, our audience deals with those health topics, but mostly where we can help was around support around those topics. So I guess to answer your question, basically the best way I think I've found to talk to clients about it is simply showing them the search results and asking them, do you want to get found here? And most often the answer is no, we don't want to compete with someone who has a PhD writing it. So actually just showing them what the real search results look like and then comparing it to, hey, when we look at more supportive topics, then we see competitors maybe like, I don't know, Hallmark or caregivers.com, where we actually do want to see ourselves amongst those names. So that's one way I use to communicate, is just actually showing them what the search results look like and just being really rational about it.
Bringing them back down to reality. So it's a tough thing to do sometimes. So the main KPI here seems to be that you are looking for new users or increasing your user base, perhaps increasing engagement of users. I was wondering what the campaign did for CaringBridge in terms of increasing their organic visibility on the search results. Did it also increase traffic, or was the emphasis really just on get the new users?
Great question. Yeah. So their main goal is to increase visibility in general across for users who may not be familiar with them or who need to be reminded. So by creating this content, we saw a lot of success definitely across the search visibility side. So impressions were up, just checking this year's numbers, more than 300%, which is really, they wanted people seeing CaringBridge's name associated with these topics and search results, and that's what we got. In addition, so since starting the campaign in 2018 to now, we went from ranking for about 2,500 keywords to 22,000. So just a lot more, not just more users for a few pages, but just a lot of different types of keywords we're being found for as we create new content. And then from a traffic perspective, yeah, year over year, we're up more than 200%. So it kind of was this, ripple effect of having more people see us in search results and then working to try and get those clicks. And then now our main idea is getting more people to actually take an action. So sign up for the newsletter, start a site. And that's been a huge push for us and is, continues to be going into the new year.
Right. And I forgot to ask this question to Lily, but I wanted to ask to everybody. But I think, Kashal, this is less pertinent to you because your campaign was for last Black Friday. Is that right? Okay. So
this Black Friday is coming.
Yeah, Black Friday is
in the coming week.
But your campaign was for last Black Friday. So COVID-19 wasn't a factor at that point in time. Was the pandemic a factor for you during your campaign, Abby, and then Lily?
So it continues to be a factor. So we write about how to cope with health crises and what could be more relevant than what we're going through right now. So that was actually, very much a push but another instance, Lindsay, of search volume tools not being accurate because we just don't have enough data. So basically looking at what worked for us in the past, like how to cope or quotes, things like that, and incorporating that into pandemic topics. And we've seen great success with that. For instance, one of the posts around COVID is actually our #2 post this year and has driven more than 70,000 visits since April. So we've seen a lot of success with those support terms. But if you were to look up, that keyword, you wouldn't see any volume. So really there, it was just about looking at things like Google Trends, exploding topics, talking to people, reading comments, and just thinking maybe rationally, like what might people want to know? And we've seen success with that, replicating kind of topics that we did in the past.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's a really great point about the keyword tools not necessarily reflecting what was happening with COVID. I think a lot of the tools, even to this day, some of the main tools that people use to track keywords and to get keyword ideas still haven't updated with coronavirus keywords. So there's a bit of a lag. There are some tools that do. To Abby's point, there's like Google Trends is the best one because it shows you the last hour or the last 4 hours. So we've used a lot of that. But for the client that we're talking about today, absolutely COVID was a big part of it. We had to create a category on the site that spoke to COVID. Definitely using the highest possible levels of EAT throughout that content just to be able to write about it. But we did notice that as it relates to this particular niche, people did have a lot of questions about how coronavirus was impacting this type of, their experience with the product. And so we were getting ahead of that content and even actually got the client listed in top stories a few times for our content, which was very exciting.
Nice. Yeah, hopefully people won't have to think about this in the future. Knock on wood, but of course we want to be prepared for anything because there's going to be eventually some other current affairs thing, and all this stuff, all of your tips will help to inform how they approach that problem in the future. If it's not this problem, it's going to be another one, and as marketers we need to be able to pull our weight for our clients. Okay, moving right along to Kashal of Infidigit, Best Retail Search Marketing Initiative. Now, yours was a Black Friday campaign, and Black Friday, every time I read about it with regards to e-commerce SEO, it just seems like a whole different world. What are some of the things to be aware of when you're running a Black Friday campaign?
So one thing when it happens about Black Friday is you can face any competition from news website or anything. Now, let's say if you started ranking #1, #2, and let's say somebody published that, okay, how the sale of Black Fridays are happening across the major e-commerce companies. They could suddenly come at a higher position and outrank you. So one thing which we need to be aware of is while doing this particular part of SEO, we need to constantly work towards the ranking and plan our strategy in such a way that it's going to outrank even the news website or the other websites. Let's say in our case, we did outrank blackfriday.com itself. So
nice.
When that particular thing had to happen, we had to ensure that the page spread is really optimal. The technical SEO is all taken care of. The site health is at its optimal level. And there are several keywords supporting that one particular page so that the page can rank well at that particular position and the ranking stays at that #1 for a long period. So that's one of the major things which people need to be aware of when they're running such kind of campaign.
Right. So actually, I'm glad you brought up some of the technical portions and structured data and things like that, because I commonly ran across in applications, we added structured data, right? And in your case, Kashal, was it FAQ structured data that you implemented?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. FAQ and the Q&A schema.
Okay, cool. Yeah, very big for e-commerce. For our other winners, did you use any structured data that didn't already exist in the campaigns? Did that work out for you? Let's go with that. Let's go with Abby, because I want to know, this is interesting. It's a UGC thing. Was there any structured data implementation in your campaign?
Full transparency, not really. I mean, your typical like article structured data, but since the UGC we used was more just comments that we put as part of the content. Yeah, that was not a big part of our campaign.
Nice, less work. Lily?
Yeah, it actually was a big part for this client. So I love FAQ schema. It's something I've been writing about for a couple of years now, I guess a year and a half. But yeah, we actually added that to a lot of our pages that already had certain types of schema on it, because in many cases you can blend FAQ schema with different types of schema, like product or something else. We do use product schema for this site. and person schema we used, and recipe schema as well. So we actually had some like legacy recipes sitting in the site without recipe schema. So if you have that situation, it's such an easy opportunity to get new traffic, because it's really make or break for recipe content.
Okay, and Lindsay, for B2B, is there a schema application here?
We used a couple instances of FAQ schema on pages where it was really relevant, some of our really top of funnel, like educational, informative content, and then more site-wide, just kind of helping them and make sure we had, org schema and things like that implemented.
Right, I'm definitely seeing this trend of people adding schema just wherever they can. It just seems like a low-hanging fruit kind of task. You might as well get the most out of your content. And speaking of content, Kushal, so Black Friday, I understand there was also content involved here. What are we talking about? Is it just like buying guides or?
Much more than buying guides over there, George. So we worked on several infographics, videos, content which was definitely required for the schemas which we had implemented, like the FAQs, the how-tos, Q&A. So all those content has to be created for this kind of campaign. In all this particular thing, infographics did help us a lot, because we had created an infographic around how should you go around shopping for a Black Friday. And a complete infographic was created around that. So what happened is, when Google featured us on the featured snippet, this was one of the major elements which was standing out on the search results. And because of this, the number of clicks and the CTR was much higher. And this was also one of the reasons why the campaign achieved almost 120 times higher ROI as compared to paid. So for them, the paid ROI was just 2x. What ROI that they received from organic search was 240x. So something like this, when content strategy is really well placed, people can get out from organic search. And that's where organic search is really important, and content plays a crucial role in that.
ROI, huge ROI numbers. Feels good, doesn't it? I understand also that you placed Black Friday, the term Black Friday, in the header. Could you explain what this was meant to achieve?
True. So one thing, when we placed this particular thing in the header, was the challenge that how do we build enough number of backlinks to this particular page. Now, we emphasize a lot on internal links as compared to links from other websites, because as if Google considers that as spammy links, and there are lots of manual penalties and everything going on. So our strategies are devised towards internal links more as compared to external links. Now, to bring more internal links onto this particular page, it was important that it gets the maximum prominence. So we placed it well in the header of the site, so that all the 300,000 pages, that's the overall number of pages on the Superblist website, can create a backlink to this particular page. And it worked out well. Within a few days of placing this particular thing in the header section, we saw that from no ranking at all, this page started ranking at least on the second page or the third page. With further optimization, we were able to push it much higher and get it to the #1 ranking. So that was one thing where number of backlinks got created was tremendous. The other thing which we saw was, we were looking also at the server logs and the other stuff to understand how frequently Google is crawling this particular page. The crawling also increased a lot as soon as the number of backlinks in terms of internal links to this particular page increased. The crawl frequency of this particular page increased a lot, and that could also be one of the reasons that throughout the Black Friday days, this particular campaign retained that featured snippet for a long period. So that was one of the major advantage of placing it in the header.
I see. So we have run out of time, gone way past that, but I did want to ask you if there's any final tips. And I'm going to be asking all of you this once again, because we forget things in the moment. But let's start with Kushal. Are there any final tips for anybody maybe looking to optimize their e-commerce site, gain more visibility there, or just running a Black Friday campaign?
So one thing which I would suggest people is create clarity in your campaigns. More often we see people having, let's say, one particular page and multiple keywords targeting that same page. Now, and multiple keywords, when we say, it's kind of that, okay, there are Black Friday, Cyber Monday, all the keywords pointing to that one single page. Now, what happens when you create something like this? The clarity is not good enough for a particular page. we suggest that, okay, create more clarity, and Google enjoys when there is more clarity on a particular page. So instead of compiling all the content into one single page, it's better to segregate that particular thing into different pages, create more clarity. And once you make things simple for Google, that's definitely going to help you rank better.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'd like to turn it over to everybody else. If there was any final comments you wanted to leave our viewers with, perhaps something you forgot, or perhaps something you wanted to add on to. Maybe your experience was different than one of the other award-winning campaigns here, and you can just add to that as a caveat. Are there any final thoughts? Let's start off with Abby. Do you have anything for us? And it's totally fine if you don't.
Yeah, no, actually I do. One thing is just when we talk about user intent, I think a lot of times it's like SEO's version of what we think user intent is. But I guess just one final tip is users offer their feedback, whether it's in blog comments or on social or across forums. So listen to them. Because that can be what really takes your article from, your perspective, or, using what you've gotten from research or competitive pages to something that really stands out and actually makes an impact in people's lives. So yeah, just like looking through what users say, because they offer their feedback, and by incorporating that, you can really create something that like resonates with them.
Excellent. Pay attention to the people, not just the metrics there. Lily, was there anything else on your end?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that this campaign was as successful as it was, as I mentioned before, was that there was no single strategy that worked. It was a combination of a lot of different strategies. So like, you brought up schema. We also did that. We did backlink auditing. We did new content consolidation and things like that. And another thing that made it so successful was like being at an agency, we have the ability to leverage multiple different experts within my team to do different things simultaneously. So that just allows you to hit all the different areas of SEO. So I think it's, especially when your site is negatively impacted by a core update, it's very important to focus on every possible area and not just think that maybe it's one thing that caused the problem.
Right. You can certainly maybe triage the duties that are most important, but you can't really cherry pick with SEO. It's all encompassing.
Totally.
Lindsay, did you have anything to offer?
I'm almost piggybacking on kind of user-generated content, but in a little bit of a different way. A lot of the questions that the pros team was writing thought leadership blogs on were because their sales team, had been told that people wanted more content on that. So when we got closer to collaborating with product marketing managers, with their brand team on kind of anticipating what questions those were and making sure we had content curated for that, we were kind of like able to already get in front of some of those questions that we knew prospects were asking. So just kind of working in collaboration with the folks that have the insider news is always really helpful for us too.
It's great when you get clients that are willing to give you access to other parts of their business and not just marketing, right? Okay, that is it. Once again, I would like to thank all of our winners, of course, NP Digital, Path Interactive, Uproar, and Infodigit, as well as our award sponsor, Microsoft. And thank you for checking this out. If you want to get in touch with me, or actually, you know what? Let's go. They're not going to want to get in touch with you. They're going to want to get in touch with you. What is the best way to contact you? You can just say it out, and hopefully we can get it on screen one way or another, or somewhere in the description. Abby, how can they contact you or Uproar?
Oh, email or LinkedIn. Always on those two things.
Okay, Lily?
For me personally, it's Twitter, and for my company, it's pathinteractive.com.
Okay, and Lindsay?
Yeah, LinkedIn for me and npdigital.com for the company.
Okay, Kashal?
Same here, LinkedIn as well as email. Email me at kaushal@infodigit.com.
All right. Thank you all very much for your time, and have a wonderful rest of SMX.